Here goes. All right, we're going to start working on Unit 1 here today, but before we dig into the actual materials, what we need to do is we need to make sure that people have the tool that we need to do our first portion of the classwork with, which is Microsoft Excel. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go over to the My Gateway website. Now, I'm not sure how you guys log into this from a student perspective, but I think if you basically go to the Gateway website, they have a link for it somewhere here, My Gateway, right up there. Your interface, of course, will look different than mine, but we have some similarities in the interface. If you scroll down through My Gateway, they do have this one Quick Links tab, and you'll notice that they have a link to Office 365. The other link I'll attract your attention to is this LinkedIn Learning thing, because we're going to talk about that too. Because in lieu of a textbook, we often use a lot of materials from LinkedIn Learning. Fantastic website, by the way, but our focus here, at least for the moment, is Office 365. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click and go to the Office 365 link here. Now, if you've never used Office in this fashion before, you will be asked the very first time you go in to set up an account, and it's a separate account sign up through Microsoft. As you can see, I have a few different ones here, and I'm going to use my Gateway account. For you guys, if you're going to sign in here, you want to get the Gateway licensed version of Office 365, you sign in with your Gateway student email account to get access to it. I do, and I find this really curious. Sometimes they give me second factor authentication stuff, and sometimes they don't. This time they didn't. But when you land in here, you end up in this interface, which basically shows you some of your documents and stuff that you have. Now, what a lot of people aren't aware of is, here at Gateway, we're very Google centric. So we have Gmail and Google Drive and Docs and Sheets and all the Google products. But we also have all the Microsoft products. So we also have Microsoft OneDrive and Word, Excel, PowerPoint, obviously, and a bunch of other tools. And it's this bunch of other tools that I think is really kind of important to kind of expose yourself to. I know, like my intro to MIS people, we kind of did a little bit of this in the summer too, right? Where I showed you how to get to this stuff. But basically they have these little icons, right, with the apps. And that's what I'm going to click on. I'm going to go to the apps icon here. And you'll notice that they have links. Now, I think this is fascinating since we're all like AI data analytics people. They're putting Copilot up here as a tool that you can bring up in your browser. What is Copilot? Yeah.
Yeah,
An
the
AI?
AI
Yeah.
tool for Microsoft.
Yeah. It's kind of like Microsoft's equivalent of like Chat GPT, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
So that's
Copilot
all it
is
is?
it's an AI engine. No, I didn't catch what you said. I apologize.
I said that's all it is. Is it like Word or what do you use it for?
Well, I'll put it like this. What do you use Chat GPT for?
Oh, okay.
It's kind of the same thing. It can be used really actually for a lot of different things, like all the major generative AI tools are built into Copilot. Very interestingly, Copilot for Microsoft started out as an add-on to GitHub to assist people with their coding, right? Now it's a tool that you can add to Windows if you want. If you use the Microsoft Edge browser, which I tend not to use, that's included in the browser. Copilot, and this is what they're pushing, and this is why I'm kind of bringing it up, is one of those tools that Microsoft is attempting to get organizations to pay into to provide Copilot access that gets embedded in all of their other products natively. So, like if you're typing a letter in Word, it'll pop in and help you type. So very powerful tool. It is built on top of the Chat GPT engine though. So and a lot of people don't know that the code base really comes from there. It's their own variant. It is very powerful. I think personally its most useful usage is with writing code. You know, that's where I found it most useful. You will notice though, okay, Teams. What is Teams? Teams is kind of like Zoom, right? With extra features added to it. We also have Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Outlook, which is their email program, doesn't link up to our gateway email, but it's available if you want it. OneDrive, which is their cloud storage. And then if you click on the all apps, and this is where it gets kind of deep and weird, right? It's like, oh, wow, there's a lot of stuff in here. And this is all included for free. I don't know if as students, you guys see all the same products, but whatever product you see, you have at your disposal to use. One thing that I think is really fascinating is some of the tools within here are very, very expensive standalone tools. Otherwise, for example, Microsoft Project is not typically included in Office, right? This is usually an add-on, an expensive one. The Visio, another one of those products, right? And they have some other weird ones. And real frankly, I've never even tried, right? But they're all available here for you to experiment with. Some of these, including Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI. That's one that we use in the data analytics program. When we get to the second data analytics course, that's a product that we start delving into, which is, and you will see this, Microsoft Excel basically has some of the features of Power BI, but Power BI takes it to the next level. It's a product that's very similar to Tableau for doing data analysis. And these are both two products that you will get well-versed in this program, right? Knowing Power BI and knowing Tableau and knowing Excel, that's employable right there, folks, right? Because so many, or I should say, so few people really know how to use those on high level basis. One that I discovered really accidentally a number of years ago, you know, teaching in the web program, that's my primary program here at Gateway, is this tool, which allows you to create like websites, like a drag and drop and clicks, and they're kind of like PowerPoints, but they're websites. It's really a trip. I also like this is the staff notebook, but I always like the OneNote tool. That's something I run here, memory resident on my machine. And whenever I'm logged into the Office platform, I can type notes into there and it shows up on any other machine that I'm typed or connected to. So I find that to be a really cool product as well. And a lot of people just don't know about these tools, right? So go ahead and explore and check it out. There's lots of really cool things in here. I guess that's probably enough about that. But there is a spot inside here, and I always, real frankly, struggle to find it. And so I'm going to actually go up here. I'm trying to remember the pathway to get there. So, oh, right up here, where it says "Get More Apps." Right, there is a way to actually go ahead and download and install the product, and you can see I'm like fumbling with it because it's been like been more than a minute since I've tried doing this. But somewhere in here, and maybe it was on this page and I missed it, they have like a little link that says install, and of course I have like a graphic on it somewhere. But there is a way to install the product from here. If anybody finds it faster than me, I'm not embarrassed to admit I'm not finding it right now. Anybody finding the install link? I always thought they had it right here on the main page. Right. I'll tell you what I'll do.
More apps? Is that what you're looking for? More apps?
Oh, yeah, I think so. But somewhere inside here, and I think it's in Unit 1, right? It's probably at the bottom of Unit 1, right? Okay, so of course they change the interface every time you like go in here, right? So it should be right there. Okay, let's see if we can find it.
I see a install and more button on the right-hand side.
Yeah,
but I guess that's not the same.
I don't know if you guys saw that little click thing or triple icon thing that I clicked on. Interesting.
Can I suggest you hit home, click the home icon on the left, install and more.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Sure,
All right,
of course.
John. See, John, you were always winning those Kahoots in the Python class. You guys remember? I think you won like 5 or 6 of them. Thank you, because
Yeah.
you saw me like, what? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? There it is. So you go to home, install and more, and then you can click this button here, and you can download and install Microsoft Office. That will basically install, I think, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, Outlook, and maybe 1 or 2 other little tools. Maybe OneNote, I think, goes with it too. And that allows you to have local copies of the product on your machine that you can run. And all the Windows people, if you have not done this, you should do it. Otherwise, what happens is if you're running the stuff through the browser, so I'm just going to show you here, I'm going to go ahead and click on Excel, and you'll notice you get this interface, and you can see all the stuff I've been working on, like in my professional work here, still gets loaded up in here. So like my local copy of Excel pushes all of its data and content out to this platform anyhow. And so I can come in here and I can create a workbook, and it'll load it up in the browser. And real frankly, for most of the typical basic spreadsheet work that most people do with Excel, the browser-based version will work just fine. Laura, I see you have your hand up. What's up?
Yeah, I have this on my laptop, but you said I have to use my gateway email. I can't use my regular email.
If you have your own version of Excel that like you own and you pay for, I would just use that.
Okay.
Right. And actually that's a very poignant question, because you can see like down here on the toolbar, I have Excel loaded up as a locally installed product. Right. And okay, I'm just going to go ahead and create a blank workbook. But as I'm working, you notice how there's like a little profile icon up here, right? So it is possible to switch which account you're using. So right now, and I don't know how well you guys can read this, because of the screen share, maybe your Zoom toolbars are in the way, but it shows me as logged in through my gateway account. If I want, I can sign up through my other accounts as well. Right. So you can actually switch accounts. Now, when you do switch accounts, and you should be aware of this, then you're attaching to a different OneDrive and a different set of apps and products. If you already own a copy that you're paying for, I would argue that it might be better if you use your own personal account rather than use the gateway account. Here's the why. When you're done with this degree program, right, you're graduated and you're moved on and you're a famous AI data scientist or whatever, eventually your gateway account will be expired, and then you will lose access to all your stuff inside there. Right. So that's the one reason to stick with your own. So that's also a helpful tip. So like once you finish the program, it's really wise to make copies of all the stuff in your Google Drive and your Microsoft OneDrive and all that stuff, and keep local copies. One of the advantages, of course, in working with a cloud-based version, right, is if I'm only storing stuff locally, somebody comes along and steals my laptop, or spill a soda into it or something like that, my stuff is gone, right? If you work in the cloud, it persists. The one reason that we use the sign-in, right, because you can use it not signed in, right? Microsoft doesn't like it, but you can do it, is it automatically pushes my stuff to the cloud, so and I used to be very resistant to that concept, right? Because I thought, data privacy, security. But then when I started considering that oh, wow, but now I have a safety net, you know, because if something goes wrong, that stuff's out there. Or I just get on somebody else's computer and think about this that has Excel installed, or you can walk into a lab at school, sign into your account through the product, and have access to all your stuff, right? Wonderful. Right. All right. This, as you see on the screen right now, this is a blank sheet inside of Microsoft Excel. Excel is, you know, a product that was built to manipulate what we call tabular data, right? Meaning rows and columns of information. You can see that they have everything set out. All the columns are labeled. All the rows are labeled with numbers. The columns are letters. And as they go past the letter Z, they use double letters. I know there are limitations as to how many columns and rows you can have, but I think it's like astronomically huge. It's kind of an interesting thing. Sometimes I'll just, you know, have the students, how big can a spreadsheet be? You know, or how many columns and rows can a spreadsheet have in Excel? You know, and actually, I think the limitation is more about how much memory it occupies and the number of rows you can create. But there is some sort of theoretical limit.
I can tell you.
No, please do.
It's 1,048,576 rows, and and then I guess it depends on how many columns you have as well. So there's a little bit of math there. So if you're just doing rows and it's only rows, it's 1,048,576. But if you're doing columns and rows together, like it says right here, 65,536 rows and 256 columns. So it depends on if you're using one or the other and how much of each.
Now, you guys might not tap into this, but all the numbers that Noah was just stating are all powers of 2, by the way. They're all binary extrapolations, basically. Yeah, so it can hold a huge amount of data, right, inside the product. All right, but it does have limitations, and I think this is really kind of what's fascinating about it, is it's not a product that allows you to infinitely add information. It doesn't have that capability. Okay, there is a why to that. The why is we are often limited by the architecture of our operating system, the CPUs that we're using, the memory that we're using, and how much free resources we have on the system. You know, my general experience with Excel is once you get more than a couple thousand rows of information, regardless of the number of columns, it starts to get really sluggish unless you have a very powerful computer system, right? And can get frustrating. Okay, so what happens when we have more data than can fit in Excel? Welcome to the world of big data, right? Then we start to use different tools. What do you suppose would be the next step up from a spreadsheet in terms of storing information in a large capacity?
Database?
You got it, Martin, right? Yeah, that's the correct answer, right? Then you start moving to a database. And ironically, if you think of what a database is, you know, so, right, databases also contain rows and columns of information, but they're, you know, customized, right? And the difference with a database is the way the data is stored, right? A database will write each row of information dynamically. Once it's written, then I can keep adding more. It doesn't have as much of a limitation. Noah, since you're like, I don't know if you're using like ChatGPT to get the answers or whatever.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Ask ChatGPT, what is the capacity, for example, of a MySQL database? How much data can it hold?
It says up to 256 terabytes. It depends on which storage engine you're using.
Yeah,
If you're using
exactly.
MyISAM, it's the 256 terabytes. They have InnoDB, which can do 64 terabytes.
Mhm.
Actually,
How much do you have on your computer? Do you have a terabyte on your computer? Well, you might.
I have one single terabyte.
So that's like everything you have, right? And when you start thinking about what goes into a database, typically is text. How much text is that database holding with 256 terabytes? It's an insane amount of data. Insane amount.
And some of them use compression.
Yes, this is
So
true.
that
as
would be, yeah.
Yeah, and that's, you know, without getting into like the fundamental technological aspects of it, you know, compression is a really clever way to save space on a computer. Often the strategy for compression is, hey, you got that document, you know, so for example, just look at it like a syllabus or something, right? Looking at a document, well, I got some text here, but the rest of this line is blank. So when I compress the file, I can just say rest blank instead of counting every space, that type of thing. And then that is, you know, seen as an efficiency. There's other schemes as well. Very fascinating. One of the original compression technologies, we use it all the time still, like zip files. Are you guys familiar with that? That was the technology that was invented here in Brown Deer, Wisconsin. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. The company that created it is called PKware, and that company is still in existence. And they have an office in the 3rd Ward in Milwaukee still, right? They never really made money off the zip file, but they're still in operation. And back in the day, you know, and I'm thinking like when I was like your age taking college classes, man, zip files were like the rage. Like, oh my God, I could zip it and I could upload it in 5 hours instead of 20, you know, that kind of thing. And it was, for us, back then, it was humongous, right? Because we were working with diskettes that had like a 1.4 meg limit. Like, how do you squeeze stuff onto them? Yeah, very, very fascinating. And, you know, and once again, Wisconsin having impact on IT, you know, which I think is really cool. All right, let's jump back over. And the next thing I'd like to do is we are going to revisit Excel, so don't worry that, you know, we'll come back to it. But basically, what I need you guys to do is to make sure that you do install Excel. Once you have it up and running, what I want you to try to do is create a spreadsheet, type anything into it, and then hit save. And if it saves, it's working, right? And I know mine is working. But all I need to see as proof, if you show me a screenshot of Excel running, that says to me that you're okay. You get points for it, but you need that tool in place before we can start working with Excel. Right. We'll circle back around, provided that we have time this evening, and start working in Excel, so we get some of the fundamentals, we get the feel for it. And I know from my own experiences, right? I've been working with this product, I mean, even on a teaching level now for 3 decades, and I've been using it that long on a pretty high level, and I still feel like I'm only scratching the surface with it. That's how big and robust of a product it is. I always learn new things about it. Often I'm teaching a class and I'll have a student that knows a trick that I don't know, and I'm all about that. So if you guys got something to share with me, I'd love to learn it. But arguably the killer app of the Microsoft Office suite. Arguably, right? This is the one. Microsoft Word's impressive too, not as impressive as Excel. So that's a big one. The other thing that I do want to talk about here is LinkedIn Learning. So, you know, when we were in the My Gateway interface, there was this link here as well. And I don't know how many of you have explored this link, but LinkedIn Learning is a platform. You may have heard this spiel from me before. I'm going to go ahead and just open it up from this. Okay. I don't know why it's just not taking me in, because in my other tab here, I'm already in, whatever. You guys should be able to get in to it directly. The link that I provided, okay, this is for the AI course. I apologize. This is for the data science course. So you can see I'm using it for that course as well. And what I'd like you guys to do, at least with that first link, is to go in and see all the videos that I've watched here that have a green check mark next to them, which is basically the intro and section 1. I would like you guys at the very least, you know, in between this class and the next, is to go through those videos, because I think this guy does a great job of talking about what is data science, how it's used, what its impact is, why it's important, um, what a unicorn is, all that stuff is talked about in here. And if you're not familiar with this platform, by the way, LinkedIn Learning is a platform that is filled with complete IT courses, not like little 5-minute videos. I mean, most of the videos are short, you can see, but there's a whole series of videos in this series, right? You can see it gets pretty deep. The other thing that I think is fascinating about it is when you go through a section, they have these little chapter quizzes, and I would encourage you to take them, right? And if you can answer correctly, make it all the way through the course, you earn a little badge and you can throw it on your LinkedIn profile, right? And guess what? I know people that get hired because of that, you know, so may as well, right? I'm not going to push you to go through this whole course, but if I were you, I would, right? Do it at your leisure. This is supplemental material. It's not required, but I think they do such a great job of developing content that it's always high level material, you know, really expert people with expert knowledge. Everything is fully transcripted. Sometimes there's sample files that you can work with. You know, so for example, there's exercise files that you can follow along with, and the content is excellent. Just to give just a little plug, how many of you have had Christians or classes with Christian Her? Is anybody here at classes with Christian? Right, a few of you. Right. Christian is one of our web instructors. He on occasion will teach in the data program as well. Christian Her has several videos on this platform. Right. And we're really proud of them for it, right? Because it's quite an accomplishment. And believe it or not, they fly them out to LA and they have like a studio where they do it all, and you know, very, very pro level stuff. And I know Christian's knowledge level is, you know, immense. He's, by the way, working on his PhD in artificial intelligence, getting really close to finishing, you know, so we should all be proud of him that we have him on board here at Gateway, that kind of expertise, you know. All right, so please take some time and watch this. I find it highly useful and important. And so you'll do that at your leisure. I'm not going to play it during class time. What I would like to do, though, is I would like to take a break because I see that I've been rambling here for a while. Let's do a 5-minute break. Pretty normal for me to do a break in the middle of class. And then we'll come back and continue. I'm going to take a look at these next couple of items when we do. So I'll see you guys in 5. We're back from break, and I want to explore this little link that I put in here. And this is a couple of graphics that Christopher had found a couple of years ago, like when we were first building the program. We were looking for, like, you know, interesting information to share with our students to get them thinking about, you know, how much data is being generated in modern society. And I do want you to be mindful of the fact that the two graphics that we're looking at and comparing are from 2019 and 2021, right? You know, by all intents and purposes, dated information already. But interestingly, one is pre-pandemic, one is during pandemic, right? What happened during the pandemic, you guys? Well, yeah, right. Why, George? Because, well, I'll look at my kids as an example. I'm going to school in person. Oh, guess what? All of a sudden you're on Zoom, right? And then, you know, while you're at home on Zoom, what else are you doing, right? Most kids, and I would watch kind of how she would operate. She'd have like her school Chromebook and do her schoolwork, but she had a personal laptop and she's watching like Netflix or playing like Pokemon or like whatever the deal was, right? Like a lot of us do. And yeah, I think this is really kind of interesting. So they say in 2019, this is what happens in 1 minute on the internet. And just look at some of these metrics. I'll let you guys kind of read it for yourself. So in 60 seconds, it's just like 1 million logins on Facebook. Like, oh my God, right? And just just kind of like go around the circle there and just look at like maybe a platform that you use. Like if you're a Twitch person, so they get 1 million views on Twitch in a minute. 2.1 million snaps, or 4.5 million videos are viewed in 1 minute on YouTube. Oh my God, right? Crazy amounts of data. Now, where it gets even weirder, right? This is pre-pandemic. Then you move down here and you look at the same metrics, and then do some comparisons. And did it shrink? No, not even close, right? And this is really kind of the grand takeaway. So I ask a couple of questions here, and you can look at these images on your own. And by the way, I mean, the citations are here. So if you want to see where it's at now, I don't know if these people are still doing it or not. I haven't really checked myself, but I asked kind of some of these questions. It's now 2025. How much do you think this has changed since then? Like what was the rate of growth, even for one service? So for Facebook, the rate of growth was 40% in 2 years. Right? I'll have you answer that question on your own. All right. So does anybody want to take up that challenge? Can you find an update to this? You want to take these people's little hash marks or whatever you call these, and search and see if you can find a 2025. And we know the pandemic had an impact. And I've always had this contention, and I was like saying it on campus to our administrators, is, many of us who are in the IT areas, and especially in the web and the software areas, we were already Zooming before the pandemic. We were kind of mixed mode. We had Classroom and we had Zoom or Google Hangouts or some other tool like that. And then when the pandemic kicked in, it was like, okay, everybody go home. Here's a laptop. Good luck. Get on Zoom. Teach your classes on Zoom. And there's people who would never, ever even considered doing that before, much less teaching in that format, or students that are like, oh my God, I need to see people, I made the contention at that time with our administration that it pushed us technologically 10 years into the future. Like we needed more hardware, we needed more bandwidth, we needed not only more hardware, but better hardware, right? The moment the pandemic started, well, not the moment, but right around the moment the pandemic started, and I'm like, oh wait, the kids are going to both be at home and they're Zooming while I'm Zooming, and we have like a basic Spectrum account. That's not going to cut it, right? And that's a tip I give to a lot of my people. So like before this session started, Christina and I were with Vaughn, one of my other web students, and he was like in the Zoom session with us, but his connection kept dropping. I know he's on a Chromebook, but I still think it's partially his bandwidth as well. One of the problems that happens with bandwidth in particular is the up speed of your internet connection pushing out to the rest of the world. The down speed might be quick, but your up speed's not slow. So like often if you go up a tier level in your internet provider, it makes a huge difference in your internet experience. Gives you really a lot more satisfaction. Noah?
I did find a small update to that. It's not the same people that did it. I looked, they didn't continue doing it after 2021, but a lot of people have continued doing that because it was a good idea. But they didn't do the exact same metrics. Sometimes they did, like YouTube, they did. YouTube stayed virtually the same at 3.47 million. Facebook actually doubled at 2.1 million in 2024 instead of the 1 million. Snapchat got 3.5 billion instead of 2.1. Oh, I'm sorry. This might be for the year. But this is, yeah, I'm sorry. Hold on. No, this is what happens in an internet minute.
This is a link that John dropped into the chat here.
Okay.
Hey, Martin, by the way. So, and John, you prefer John, right? Yeah, I thought so. But yeah, so interesting comparisons, right? And then here's kind of a really bizarre metric, and I don't know why I recall this one for so long, but back in the early 2000s, it was estimated that approximately 60% of internet traffic at that time was pornography. I like that for a metric.
Did you say 60%?
60%.
Wow.
Like, oh my God, really? You know, you got nothing better to do with your time aside from that, you know, but it's kind of an astounding metric. And you know, they're not measuring that here, right? That's not like good, clean content. And interesting for sure. And then if we could even conceptualize how much information is moving around on the internet, where does it all go? What happens with it? Well, some of it is fleeting, some of it just disappears, right? Like some of the information flying over the internet is you streaming a video, and once you've consumed the content, it's gone. Much different than if, all right, well, I'm typing a post on Facebook and uploading a picture. That stuff is retained. Yeah. How about this for a thought? How many of you never delete your email messages? So this is really kind of a goofy thing, right? Because I'm looking at my email thing up here and I got 127 unanswered, and people are like, man, you're not on top of it. I'm like, I'm much more on top of it than I used to be. Because what happens is I get like junk mail and I just don't even look at it, right? And that number builds up. But yeah, that is a thing. All right, let's move on. I think this is an interesting metric. Okay, so John, you just dropped another one in there.
2024, I think that will be the latest one, I guess.
Well, yeah, right. They wouldn't have data on 2025 yet. But if there's a metric here that we can look and compare. Now this is fascinating. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this because now they're starting to take metrics on AI, right? The AI usage, which really 4 or 5 years ago, it's not that it wasn't around, but people really didn't use it, or they were afraid of it, or they didn't know they could use it, or whatever. But now everybody is pushing it on you. Google's pushing it on you. Microsoft, Apple's now getting into it, right? Right. A lot of us do have accounts. I do have accounts on both Copilot and ChatGPT that I use somewhat regularly. And I've experimented with a bunch of different AI engines. We'll talk about all that as we kind of move forward. But these are very interesting metrics, kind of, you know, a lot for your brain to absorb in terms of the volume of it, right? I mean, it's heavy to think about how much stuff is happening out there. Here's another graphic. I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit. And, you know, we have this thing that we call big data, right? And this is kind of an esoteric term. It doesn't really have necessarily a definition. Some people do try to define it with parameters. But what they're showing here is basically what a zettabyte is. So we were just talking about like gigabytes and megabytes and terabytes, right? So now like some of us have like a 1 or 2 or 4 terabyte drive on their computer to store information and how much that can hold. And then a zettabyte is 1 trillion. I'm trying to wrap my head around this conceptually. 1 trillion, that's how many zeros? 12 zeros, right? Gigabytes. Right? 1 zettabyte. What the metric is trying to show us here is that it says we face an overwhelming amount of data in every industry. It's greater than 2.5 petabytes of customer data stored by Walmart every hour. Okay, now that's a mind-blowing. 292 exabytes of mobile traffic by 2019, up from 30 in 2014. Oh my God, do you think people have less cell phones now? I mean, that's got to have doubled, tripled, quadrupled, I'm guessing, right? That number. 1 terabyte of data produced by a cancer patient every day. I'm not sure where this stuff is coming from exactly. I mean, there's a thing down there. But, you know, when this graphic was made in 2018, right, these were kind of the metrics. We're now in 2025, and these are their predictive analysis of the data, given the mathematical expansion, the growth rate, and then what they're showing here is the types of things that are generating it. Like how much of it is like enterprise data, like regular businesses doing their business, right? And then how much of it is just us like, hey man, what's up? LOL, emoji, like or whatever. And it's all, texting, images and multimedia, and sensors and devices. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting category. Like, what are they talking about with sensors and devices? What kind of sensors and devices are we even referring to?
Is that the Internet of Things? No.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah, very much
Yeah.
so, John. And so, for example, I was teaching an IT and business class on campus, incoming students, like their first semester course, first IT course kind of thing for a couple of different programs. And we were talking about IoT sensors. So for example, when you walk into a physical classroom at Gateway, they have thermostats that are in essence little mini computers that are connected to the network and take the environmental data of the classroom and feed it through the Wi-Fi into some master computer system. So somebody in a control panel sitting in Kenosha at their desk go, oh, look, classroom 42 is only at 68 degrees. Let's turn up the temperature, right? And maybe they have software that does it automatically. But that's sensor data also, right? And we're pushing all of that information over our networks. Noah?
I just looked it up. They didn't predict COVID in 2018, and just in 2020, we had 64.2 zettabytes generated. We're at 175 zettabytes at the moment in terms of global data.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah,
Wow.
more than they
And
could
your
have ever
source is,
imagined. Just
your source
ChatGPT.
is ChatGPT.
They pulled that from Neural World, and so Neural World was the research. It actually doesn't look like too great of a resource when I click on it, actually.
So you're gonna make me do this too, right? So
I'm horrible, sorry.
it's quite all right.
It's too quick. That's kind of the problem, though, is yeah, you really do got to dig into the resources, make sure it's actually getting accurate information, you know.
Yeah, I'm trying to be careful here if I'm using my personal or my school account. I probably should use my school account, honestly. All right. Never mind.
Here's the link I was looking at for 2020. I just posted it in the chat. Said the world generated 64.2 zettabytes of data last year, but where did it all go?
How about not, let's look at it now, right?
I didn't do a minute. I just did all of it.
Yeah. So I gave it a time frame because I thought it would be kind of interesting. But this is like what we're looking here, right? So like if you guys aren't users of this type of technology, it is super helpful because in a sense it's kind of like doing a search, right? But there's an intelligence working behind it that we'll talk about that in the AI class. But it says overall data creation is around 2.5 quintillion bytes, translating to approximately 1.74 petabytes per minute, right? Over 347,000 emails are sent, 5.7 million searches, 500 hours of video are uploaded.
I think we know how they made that last graphic. Because yeah, this is almost the graphic, just not in graph form.
Right. And you can imagine like when they were putting those original images together, they didn't have ChatGPT to ask. Right. And this is kind of the power that we have in our hands now, folks. So, and this is like, okay, is this cheating? And these are some of the ethical talks we're going to have in the AI class. Is this cheating? Or am I just being smart?
I'm relating it like, calculators were always a big no-no when I was growing up, but now we all have calculators. I'm kind of relating it to that. I think it's just going to speed up our processing power as humans dramatically. It does feel like cheating, though, to clarify.
And this is amazingly silly, but I'm looking at like this, like these bullet points right here. And in the AI class, I think at the tail end of my PowerPoint tonight is basically exactly these bullets. So I'm wondering where they're pulling them from. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And yeah, I don't want you guys to use this to write your homework or generate your code, but there are ways to use this very ethically and productively, and we will explore that. Generative AI is the aspect of AI that freaks people out the most, right? Especially those that have not tried using it and seeing the efficiencies that can be gained from it. We have to get into this mindset, and I'm going to talk about this in the AI class too, that we see it as a common tool. If you are doing just a general search on Google, every day, I'm just doing a generic Google search, and I have their AI search assistant turned down in my browser, right? So like these are like the normal search returns, but up here is their Search Labs AI overview. And I be real frank about this. Sometimes it provides great information, and sometimes when I know about the topic a little bit, I look at it and go, that's not quite right. So it doesn't mean it's exactly correct. And here's the question you have to ask yourself: why? Why is it not exactly correct? Because these tools, including ChatGPT, the free version, so the free is the important part, is only using information that's searchable on what we call the surface web, which is less than 5% of the internet is searchable. That's a mind-boggling statistic right there. I teach this to my web students. When we go to a search engine and we search, that search engine can only find what is publicly accessible and published and known. Think about Brightspace, for example. If I go to the Brightspace website through Gateway and I don't have a login, I'm just seeing the front page. If I get past that login screen, it's more than the tip of the iceberg. It's like an ant and a mountain, I mean, it's like a huge difference of information. All the real information is behind the login. When you use paid versions of generative AI, those tools can often have access to, if you provide them the credentials, to all of your login stuff, and then can search all that too and perform tasks for you, right? So this is where it gets kind of creepy. Bad or good? Well, I'm going to say it all depends on how you use it. If you use it for good, for example, you can get a gun and you can go hunting and have food, or you can use a gun and kill people and do horrible things, right? It's all in the intent that goes behind it. So like, have good intent is kind of what I'm trying to coach you towards. All right. So I think a lot of this stuff is fascinating. I did drop a couple of questions in here, and one is, what is the impact of the AI explosion that is happening? Okay, well, I'll let you judge for yourself. How will we manage to process all this information? I mean, let's think about this. Why is Microsoft building a huge data center in Racine County?
Because data is growing exponentially.
Yeah. They're planning for all the data that we're about to store, not even the data we're storing right now, right? If they wait until we don't have anywhere to put it, that's, it's kind of like, it's like adding on to your house before the kid's born, like you add the addition before you have the kids, not after, right? That's what they're trying to do. I did hear a really interesting little tidbit though, and this is, I think somewhat public knowledge, that they were, building phase 1 of their project. Phase 2 got started and they capped it off. Want to know what the reason for it is? They discovered that this area of the country, because of the Kenosha power plant closing down, is not generating enough power to power the data center. So now they're throwing out propositions, and this sounds like science fiction, but one of the propositions is to bury a nuclear reactor 1 mile deep in the ground below the facility. Now, talk about some crazy science fiction kind of stuff. I'm not sure how I feel about that, honestly, but okay, we'll stop this little stream that we're doing now. The one thing I will also point out is I did activate the quiz for Unit 1. So after you're done with today's session at some point, and I would say after you've watched this video series, go in and take the quiz. Remember, you can do it twice. get that stuff installed. But what I would like to do with the rest of our time here is spend a little time just doing a little bit of acclimation to how Microsoft Excel works. And in fact, rather than kind of launch, because it's already up on my screen, I want to launch it from scratch. I still have a browser tab of it open up here, and we can use this to do a little bit of comparison, by the way. But I'm going to go ahead and launch it cold here on my operating system. And as it launches, it will throw you into a screen like this. If you are not logged in to the product, by the way, it will throw up a login screen, hopefully to attach you, right? And once again, it's not obligatory that you sign in, but it's recommended that you sign in. This screen here, when they first put it in the product, I was like, what the hell are they doing? That was my reaction. But it is kind of like their modern version of the splash screen. This splash screen first appeared in the Office 365 versions before it appeared in the regular Office versions, which is what we're using when we install. But I've grown past it at this point, and I do not mind using it. I am going to go ahead and create just a blank workbook, but I do want you to notice here that you can trigger, a lot of common things. Recently used files are here. I can open stuff from anywhere in my OS or whatever I'm linked to. And then I can control my account options and the product options from here. And this is one of those little option things that kind of disappeared from their traditional menus. I will show you this really quickly, some of the stuff that's in here. So most people will never have a need to touch any of this stuff, and I'm just going to give you that as a heads up right away. However, people that work with data and data scientists and actuaries and accountants and stuff like that often do dig in here to tweak things. One of the big areas inside here, by the way, is when you start working with add-ins and some of the tools that you can add to the product to do very specific tasks. One that we will kind of explore a little bit is the analysis tool pack and the solver add-in. So not normal parts of the product, but things that you can add. Once you're actually into a spreadsheet, once again, they have a setup for tabular data. A lot of people wonder where this concept came from. Did Microsoft invent spreadsheets? And the answer is no, right? For forever, if you can think about this, there's always been people that have made lists or columns and rows of information. Why? Because it just makes sense to. Like if you look at a baseball score, what's the format of that? It's in a table. It's rows and columns. It makes total sense for it to be that way because you can tell what piece of information is attributed to another piece of information because of its structure. So the concept really becomes each one of these data cells in the spreadsheet. And you see I'm just kind of clicking around with my mouse, or you can use your arrow keys on your keyboard to move around. That's another thing you can do. And you can also use your tab key or your enter key. So enter takes you down, tab takes you across, and people that work with spreadsheets know this stuff. But if you've never really delved in, these are really common use scenarios, for working with a spreadsheet. You'll notice that whenever you move around the sheet, as I click on a different cell, do you notice how the row and the column highlights so you know where you're at? Right, that's really handy. There is a zoom control in Excel. It didn't used to have it, right? So you can get way in there and not have to strain your eyes to look. So like if it's like ultra tiny, I mean, who's reading that? Nobody. Okay, but kind of going back to this concept here of when did this technology come about? It's not really that new. This is what blows my mind about it. When I started working in IT, and I worked as a support person initially. So like we'd have users at our university, and they would have a desktop that they would get, and it was a PC, right? Not a Windows machine, right? Windows was not really around at that point quite yet. people would run DOS on their machine. They would run WordPerfect as their word processor. They would use Lotus 1-2-3 as their spreadsheet. And those were like the big products back then. Like a professional document editor would use nothing but WordPerfect, right? And it was all done from, kind of like command line level type programs, by the way, as well. But Lotus 1-2-3 was one of the first big products that was a popular spreadsheet product. I worked at that university for a guy that used to work at Alice Chalmers as an engineer, and he was the dean of our school. And one day I walked into his office and he was having problems with this computer, and I was going to help him out. And he was typing a letter. He's like, I just got to finish up this letter. And then I walked around, was looking at his screen. I'm like, oh my God, you're using Lotus 1-2-3 to write letters? He goes, yeah, I love it, because I can keep all the columns really straight and everything. And like, oh my God, yeah, I guess you can, right? He didn't, he wouldn't use like Word or WordPerfect because that was for him. So literally what he would do is he would just have one column, make it really wide, and he would just start typing hello, and then, go down, type his couple of sentences, you know what I mean? He would type letters like that. And it kind of blew me away. I'm like, I never even thought you could use a spreadsheet like that. It's like, yeah, you can use it for whatever you want. It doesn't have to be for crunching numbers, right? Because that's kind of like the assumption. But it is very handy to know that you can use it to drop in text, numbers, graphics, links, all sorts of crazy stuff, right? And you'll see that. When, of course, you're using numbers and text, then you can also, for example, and I'm zooming in just a little bit here so you can see, but if I just kind of like randomly type in some numbers here, okay, that's not a number. All right, this is where I like have ChatGPT do it for me. Type me a list of numbers. It has on the fly capabilities to analyze information without writing formulas. So for example, if I highlight all these numbers, I want you to notice down here in the toolbar, it tells me the average of those numbers, the count, and the sum. I didn't write a formula to get it. Just by highlighting them with my mouse, it did that. However, if I did want to write a formula, formula writing starts with an equal sign. And for example, if I want the sum, right, I type in the beginning of the formula, I highlight the cells I want, I close my statement, and there's the sum. Right? You'll notice that in this cell, and this is what's kind of fascinating, if I click on cell H4 where this number is, up in my formula bar, I see the entry that I made. If I click on cell H10 where I typed in my formula, I now see the formula. So really what's in this cell is a formula, not a number. But when the formula executes, and I'll have you think about this, programmers, right? Because you guys have all learned how to code a little bit at this point. It's executing code, right? So Excel has its own formula language. It also has the capability to inject programming code into the spreadsheet as well. And in the old days, we would use predominantly a language called Visual Basic to write programming code. So not only could I write a formula, but I could write a program in the cell too. This is some really crazy power that you have here, actually. And it does go much, much deeper, by the way. But you can drop in all types of information. So like a very common usage for a spreadsheet, for example, is I might make a list, something like this. Okay, right, and then I might actually start adding information like whatever, just come up with a number, and we fit into this like tabular format. You can add things like borders, you can control your fonts, make it bold, you can change your fonts, pick something you really like, you can color it, you can whatever, you can do all like the same stuff you can do in a word processor. So you can make it look really nice while it's in the spreadsheet as well. I'll give you an example. Prior to the classes starting tonight, I was working on my calendars and stuff. I do it in Excel. Now, one question you might ask yourself right off the bat is why not just do it in Word? Because I have more control in Excel. And when I calculate points, I can actually write a formula to calculate my points, you see, right? And I can also do like goofy little things like they put these grid lines in here so you can see your cells, but you don't have to have them there, right? Pretty slick, right? The other thing that you'll notice is there's multiple tabs in Excel. So you don't just have one tabular document in one Excel spreadsheet. You can have multiples. So Noah, ask ChatGPT, how many tabs can an Excel spreadsheet have?
There's a theoretical limit, which is the 1,048,576. That's actually kind of crazy that it's the same number. No,
Yeah, it is kind of, yeah, I'd say that's kind of crazy.
that doesn't make too much sense. But the practical limit, it says the actual number of sheets you can add is limited. It's limited by the amount of memory on your system. Of course, it's going to say that.
Yeah, that sounds more accurate.
That's where you modify what you're asking.
A lot of different aspects to this, and we're going to start getting into nuances as we roll through class next week. What I would like you guys to do is not just get the product installed, but to explore and experiment. If you're ambitious, what I might recommend is you could go out to LinkedIn Learning, or heck, you could go to the Microsoft website. Microsoft has great tutorials too, or heck, even YouTube, and watch a couple things on Intro to Excel and just goof around with it a little bit and see how it works, get a feel for the product. There are aspects of working with spreadsheets that initially are kind of uncomfortable, real frankly, when you're used to working like with a word processor or something, because spreadsheets work in a very different way. For example, like if I take a look at the other spreadsheet that I created, and you notice I typed in numbers, why did they all write justify? Right? Yeah, well, the reason is that way, the ones columns and the tens and the hundreds and the thousands are all in the same line, right? Because that's how you do numbers. Right. And then what if this was actually dollar amounts? Could I change my formatting? Yeah, I can click the little dollar sign up here and it expresses it as dollars and cents. Notice I didn't type in dollar or period 00. Right. And there's all these different types of, patterns we can fall into. We can connect Excel to data sources. We can import data from a crazy amount of different platforms, file formats, tools, online resources. Oh my God. And then we can visualize all that information as well. And it just gets more and more powerful from there. Like if you're already kind of intrigued, I mean, this is a really neat product. Now, what's the kind of person that uses it? That's a whole separate story, but really it's people like us, right, who are in the know. People with these skills, folks, tend to make big money. I'm just saying, I'm kind of saying it like that, but it's true, right? These are important skills in the world of IT. Not a lot of people do much more than making like goofy little lists like this. But when you start getting into analysis and fancy formulas, you can do crazy powerful stuff with this product. Crazy powerful. All right, let's cap it for the night. There's a lot of material to go through. So this video ends here.